We've been having a really large number of conversations with schools and trust leaders. I'm particularly interested to learn, are schools having the same problem that we're hearing over and over again? I'm going to get right into it. The thing that we uncovered originally was our hypothesis, our thought. If this is happening in X amount of schools, this must be happening in almost every school. At the moment, we haven't found a school yet who isn't experiencing issue. Let me actually just drop myself down here a moment so that we can actually see the key information. What we found, and this was our hypothesis in its originality, was everyone is forced to use Excel and Google Sheets in order to track and monitor. Now, tracking and monitoring is an interesting conversation coming up in this space at the moment. But what we're seeing is that this might be a familiar picture for you and vice principals, your assistant principals, those that are trying to raise attainment, see that uplift across the school. Everyone's using their own version of Excel and or Google Sheets in order to track and monitor progress. You're going to see it looking very different across the whole spectrum. Often when we're on demonstration calls, we see a lot of vice principals, assistant principals nodding along. The thing that I really want to tackle as well is this awareness of the complexity of the qualifications that are being delivered. Now, it used to be really early, you'd sit an exam, the exam would have a raw mark, and then it would get converted via UMS conversion, and then the UMS conversion was used to dictate the grade. Even before that, it was quite simple because it was a single paper. We've built now 4,500 trackers that covers only about 15% of the qualifications that are available. To be clear, we haven't had a qualification that we haven't been able to cover with our tracking, given the amount that is delivered. But it gives you an understanding that some 25,000 qualifications. The complexities are within what you're actually seeing down the bottom here, unit weightings. So I, as a school leader and as a middle leader, have got to ensure that my tracker is able to deal with unit weightings. It's able to deal with scaling factors. So each unit then scales to ensure that the representative mark from that unit is then fairly represented in the final calculation of the actual grade. You've then got what grade boundaries do I actually need to apply in order to then ascertain the most really, I would say, up to date. It's very difficult to turn around and say accurate picture because there is no more accurate picture than actually sits in the exam itself. But we can give students really strong guidance compared to last year, and also understand if we add a percentage challenge to the grade boundaries. But the biggest inaccuracy we're seeing across schools at the moment is the fact that everyone is doing it differently. Everyone is using Excel and Google Sheets in their own way. It's causing a number of problems, especially with assistant principals that might line manage, let's just say, modern foreign languages, but are an English lead historically, have then got to disseminate what does the MFL tracking systems look like in comparison to the English tracking systems. So there's a lot of time spent on the fact that everyone's doing it differently, let alone potential compromises in accuracy. The other thing that I'm really keen to discuss as well is the data point process. There are so many schools still in that data locked into a 3-point data point process. So data point 1, data point 2, data point 3. Some schools have managed to squeeze 4 in. We have come across a school that's done 6 data points, but have reduced the depth of data going into it. So only 3 data points will use QLA, question level analysis. But all teachers now are still using Excel and Google Sheets at a department level. They then sit the assessment, and then they've got to do the calculations and then or type the raw marks into the spreadsheets. And then the head of department's got to quality assure that before then they then type it into their school's MIS. We know this is double data entry. And again, this is something we're seeing across all the schools that we're talking to. Again, a hypothesis that I had personally when starting Pupil Progress. But it doesn't stop there. So what we have then is the data lead's got to organise the data. So I've got to actually then ensure, chase up that, for example, I use PE, apologies PE leads out there, but I was a former PE lead who might get a phone call on the Friday going, where's your data? The window's closed. You've then got to organise that data and put it into a format that then can be uploaded into whatever tool you're using. Now, this is actually ironically the symbol for Power BI, but you might be using Scissor, you might be using 4Matrix. At the moment, this process is taking 2 to 3 weeks per data point. And I can hear some data leads screaming at the screen right now. I said it does not take me 2 to 3 weeks to get the data from here to here. Completely agree. Some people are getting that in within maybe half a day, an hour. But it's this process here that is taking all the time, getting the data in. The teachers have got to quality assure it. It's a 2-week window in which the mark books are open. So yeah, this is something that takes 2 to 3 weeks, but also most importantly is 9 to 10 weeks across the academic year before we can actually do anything with it. We're challenging the status quo. I'm really interested to hear your feedback. How are you doing it? We support schools with this process by actually, let's just take a back step actually, because this is a 25-year-old problem that no one wants to talk about. Like this, Sims was born actually at the time when schools were still using blackboards, chalk and blackboards, and then more sophisticated tools came out like whiteboards and whiteboard pens, and then schools started to have more than one computer. But Sims got in when schools only had one computer. So we've only ever done it like this way forever. So we're challenging this. Again, I'd love your feedback on it. How do you do it? What is it that you... But we've actually created exam board specific trackers that calculate the grade exactly as the exam boards do. Now, what we believe we're challenging is that teachers no longer need to use Excel and Google Sheets, because we've actually built exam board specific trackers for each qualification exam board with the tools that you're trying to access on Excel and Google Sheets, but we've actually built it into a software. So it's not a mark book, nor is it actually a spreadsheet, it's a tracker. And really, funny enough, actually, we've been using that language as a tracker for 5 to 6 years now, and then people are beginning to start to use that language, like where's your tracker, how are you tracking and monitoring. So what you've got is the ability to break down each question. This is a QLA, so I can do it subsection, or I can do it at QLA if I want. I can also do single mark papers. We've added every single previously published past paper on the platform so that you can actually really spend your time on what do I need to teach rather than trying to make sure the system is accurate. We've got exam board facing, so any changes that come up with the exam boards themselves, grade boundaries, we upload them at the end of every exam series, including the ones that are mid-year. The November mock series, for example, maths and English definitely would be interested in knowing that we actually update every single exam series. But it gives us this granularity of data. And there'll be another video to follow around the individual student reports. But this is the really fascinating thing, is because we've designed a tracker, we've actually got the ability here to see a student through the journey. But most importantly, like Juliet Capulet here, for example, target grade 8, 1 grade away from her minimum target, so on a grade 7. But most importantly, to get that grade 8, she needs 29 marks. And this is now the granularity that we can provide when we remove ourselves from that really deeply onerous process, which is what we know is really crippling. Now, the most important part is, so what, Brett? You've got the ability to see that she's 29 marks away, but what do I do with that? The great thing is, because it's a tracker, I can now see the data next to the student's name as to what areas that student is underperforming in. So you can see here, I've got this brilliant information that's showing me those 29 marks are going to come from her lowest performing areas. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your feedback. Are you experiencing this same issue? Is this something that you are also experiencing as a school leader? Is this data point process creating friction as well? And what I mean by friction is we're blind between each data point. So we've got data point 1, data point 2, data point 3. What information are we getting between these data points that enables us to see that what we've put in place, what interventions are working? Yeah, I thought I'd put it out there. It'd be really interesting to hear your comments and feedback. I'm going to tag a few people to try and get the conversation going.